3. I always get so much satisfaction out of doing that. Not quite sure why. As I said yesterday, if you watch my review of the Clark Ashton Smith movie, today's strip was late because Kathleen was on a business trip, and Linux doesn't play well with old Canon scanners, or reverse that. Old Canon scanners do not play well with anyone. So that's why it was a day late, swapped it with the movie review, but this one should be worth it. I figured we had to take a break a little bit from all the fourth dimensional type of stuff going on, have a little levity, and I'm very indebted to this book. Oh yeah. You know that there's going to be a review on that when I'm done with this and finishing it, but I'm digging deep into that. I did read a fascinating essay by Freud on creativity, which I wanted to touch on, but day late, dollar short. Probably do that next week, but yeah. I can't believe I'm really obsessed with Hawkwind. I grew up with Hawkwind as a punchline on the young ones, and nobody wanted to be that guy, but I ended up being that guy. Okay, love you all. Don't want to take up any more of your time, and I will see you next week. Have a blessed weekend. Bye. Back at it yet again, and you knew this was going to happen. At least if you follow me long enough. You knew we were going to have Hawkwind. And I like the fact that we're starting right off the bat with Lemmy there. Guess he's in the past now. I wasn't quick enough to pick that up. Now, one thing that happened during this, and you'll notice me struggling with the ink. What happened was I take the De La Rani acrylic ink and I put it into an old minced ginger jar and screw that back on. But from constantly scraping the ink off my nib, on the side of that jar, what happened was it built up. And eventually the lid didn't have a tight seal. And the ink that was within the jar gradually got thicker and thicker as the liquid evaporated because there wasn't the tight seal on that jar of ink. And I don't know, I didn't want to throw it away. So you see me struggling with it all throughout this lettering process. It was quite thick. It didn't flow off the nib very well. And so I should have just gotten rid of it entirely and started with a new jar. I've since, Kathleen, while she was on her business trip, grabbed a couple of those smaller jam jars, which I'll be using in the future because since they're smaller in diameter, you don't have to put as much ink in to get the ink to go up over the hole in the nib, which is how you ensure a good flow off that nib. And you can see me struggling here. I had so much fun with the brush pen on the last one that I've decided to ink with a small brush. I believe this is a size 2. And you can see the ink isn't flowing even off the brush. It's patchy, it skips, and it's right around here that I finally gave up the struggle, as it were, and disposed of that last remaining, 1/4 of an inch of ink that was within the jar and got fresh ink, and immediately you start seeing the lines flowing a lot better, and the lines are thick. It's taken me, 24 comics now, but I feel like these characters are finally starting to look like traditional old-style cartoons that I love so much, so we're progressing slowly, but as a bear of limited intelligence, I will take the slow and gradual progress. At least it's progress of some sort. And here's good old Lemmy. And it's really interesting because when you're laying in the lines, even though I know his eyes are going to be darkened in the patches around his eyes and his muzzle, it's a little disconcerting at first when you first put him down, because I was like, this is not so good. But yeah, it comes together. I think that's the secret to everything. Whether through that uncertainty and just get to the good spot. Now here for the Space Ritual album cover, what I did on that was I used contact paper, I believe it was Arteza, and just printed out the size of the album I wanted and then laid down the lines. The nice thing about the Arteza contact paper is you can erase those markings with your regular kneaded eraser, just as if it was a pencil, so it's very useful that way. I decided to keep them in there to give some definition to it, and I do apologize. There was a couple of times during this where I could have sworn that I hit record on my camera, and obviously I didn't because it's not there. And here you can see I'm laying in the sky doing that normal trick that I do of using a paper towel to kind of give those irregular shapes that I'll then go in and ink to give the suggestion of clouds. And another thing that you'll notice that I did this week that was different, I tried doing wet on wet without using resist and just relying upon being careful with where I laid down the water with the heavy mop in the beginning so the color wouldn't flow into the dry areas. And that saved a lot of time on a very difficult project, so I'm going to explore this further. And you can see there, using a fan brush to give the suggestion of grass. I'm slowly learning tricks. And the thing that I love, and this was entirely by accident, by going back and forth with the ground and the sky, was that schminky super granulating tundra green. You know, you rinse your brush off and it's still going to have a little bit of it in there because I'm not that thorough. I'll admit it right up front. So it gave a kind of nice light. It's a cheating kind of way to get the super granulating color in there. And you can tell I'm really trying to force those colors onto the page. Half the problem is I use hot press because I'm going to be inking the lettering and stuff in there. Cold press would hold onto the water and the color a lot more thoroughly, so it would become more saturated with color. So it's kind of a trade-off one way or another on each one. I figure eventually I'll just get it down, and there's no problem with continuing to experiment. And once again with Lemmy, I try using its Chinese white with just a touch of phthalo blue, like the very tiniest amount, maybe a touch of sap green sometimes, to try to give him that glow in the dark off color, because I still want Lemmy to be kind of otherworldly. And here you can see with Chico going in, and on each one of them I just do very light layers and keep on layering it up to build the color within them, and that way kind of suggests shape coming in. And normally when I do the otter, I'll do wet on wet, give him a little bit of Chinese white with some neutral tint, and then float in some of that Renaissance burnt sienna, and this time experimenting more. What I did here was I laid down a model, 2 coats, one just a solid, very light coat to color it, then a little bit of modeling there with the dagger brush. Then I came back and used a very light wash of gouache over the top of him. So I'm just trying out different techniques, see how it goes, and then coming in with the oil pastels for those little highlights of color. And that was why I decided to leave the lines on in the Hawkwind album, because it gave it definition, where if you've used oil pastels, kind of hard to get them to a fine point. If you do want to do a hard edge, you can put down a playing card or something like that, and then go exactly where you want that line in, and come in and then lift off. It's almost like a masking technique. You can do that, but with curve shapes, yeah, good luck. But yeah, here you can see me, I'm just building the colors up over and over with them. And I really like finally getting that cartoon style of hand down. I really like that there's a vocabulary of gestures with cartoons. I find that fascinating. And there you can see, I'm really in love with those dagger brushes. I'm pretty sure that's a Princeton Heritage. That's a very nice brush, and it's an artificial brush that springs back very well, so you're not harming animals when you're using one of those. I guess that's a good consideration. Otherwise, the kelp bed may revolt. You'll find my body. And I think we're coming close to the end, and yeah, I'm looking forward to this week. I'm really excited about it. And missed you guys. Thanks so much for watching. As usual, I'm always impressed. You guys are you're the tops. And I will see you next week. Take care. Have a lovely weekend.